Ryan.
Today we are learning basketball with Jackson Frank. He covers the NBA with Sportscasting NBA. You can find him writing and editing with the whole team over there. Shout out to the Sportscasting team. We had a lot of fun last week. Matt, as in Ben, and Jack, of course, here on the Learning Basketball podcast, doing a little NBA team bet. It was a lot of fun. You got to check out last week's episode. We all did a group project kind of thing to kind of guess who we thought would be the best regular season teams, and we had some pretty wild results this first week, but that's what the first week of NBA basketball is all about. We could shift over here to the Contenders, Pretenders little tiering. I'll name a team. You can go first, or we'll take turns or something. Just say if you got them as in the Contender or the Pretender tier, and then we can maybe go through some of where the results after and talk about where we had them. So just to premise it a little bit, we're going to go through the most of the teams here, and that we're a week or two into the NBA season. We're going to project based on not just this week, but also a little bit of our preseason expectations of who we think are the actual legit real contenders this year. And it's kind of tough to pin down because sometimes that's one or two teams. Sometimes, especially this year in the East, it feels like the whole conference is wide open and just about anyone can take it. So you can really take this wherever you would like. Historically, since Shaq and Kobe, the champion has always had a top 12 defense and top 12 offense. Last year, only the Thunder, Cavs, Celtics, Rockets, Timberwolves, Knicks, Grizzlies, Clippers, Warriors were in that ranking. The Pacers made the finals, actually had the 13th defense on the entire season. I'm sure if we only counted the games once they started playing well, they were a lot higher after that. So quite a few teams in that group. This year is kind of all over the place. We're pretty early to be using those stats predictively.
One game could drastically change
exactly
the circle of contenders statistically.
Exactly. So it's a little tough there, but I'll just go based on kind of record of where they're at right now and run through. Let's start with the East because I feel like it's wide open, and like if half of the East is a contender to you, I don't blame you because I'm pretty much there as well. But let's just run through. We got the Sixers off the bat, the 1 seed, pretender or contender?
They're a pretender to me. I think they can be a legit playoff team, but I just don't. I don't think Embiid has looked like himself defensively. Maybe that changes, but I don't trust him to be healthy anymore. And I think they're still short some dynamism on the wings. I know Paul George will help, but I just don't quite have him there. I love the guard rotation of Grimes, Maxey, Edgecombe, and McCain when he comes back. I think they'll have enough ball handling when McCain and PG are back, but I just think they're kind of lacking defense. I mean, they're one of the worst defenses in the league despite being 4-0. I know a lot of that has come with Embiid playing on a minutes limit or not playing, but I think they're in a tough spot with the lack of size behind him, and if he's not offering you much as a defensive anchor, which again could change over the next 6 months, but I just don't believe in them as a contender at this point.
Man, see, you're up close and personal. You know them too well. Where I'm sitting here thinking like the East is wide open. They got all these stars lurking. Maxey's playing really well. Like I could see it. You know, I could see it. This is probably them and the Bucks. I think are probably the hardest call for me in the East this season, just because we know they have a star. They might have multiple stars, and they have made deep playoff runs before, and the East is just so wide open. Like I don't really have a clear favorite, so I'm gonna put them on the end of my contender list. I'm gonna do it. The Sixers they might sneak in. Maybe everything goes right. Maybe this is the year. But I
think it's possible. Their offense could be like incredibly good, and if Embiid kind of continues to get his sea legs about him defensively, he's enough to kind of be pretty dang good as an anchor. So I just don't see it coming to fruition. But I obviously envision an outcome where you're correct as well. I mean, again, that offense could be like the best in the league when PG and McCain return. I mean, that is a ridiculous.
That part's on the table. The shooters they have around Embiid.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something. I think that to your point, like what Embiid still is the big question mark. Like, is he a deep defensive player of the year candidate, MVP candidate type that he's been many years before? Very questionable at the least if he'll get to that level. But that's, I think, the big wild card. But that could swing or swing it either way. With the next. We got. I think the Bulls are. I'll just pull up the record. The Bulls 4-0.
Only 4 undefeated teams left. There are only 2 in the East. Yeah,
there you go.
I think they're fun. I think the pace is pretty intriguing. I liked what Trey Jones has brought. Buzelis is really impressive fluidity and flexibility and driving is a big. But I don't trust their general half court creation. I think they're pretty much an open court offense, and the defensive personnel is certainly not up to snuff in a playoff setting. So I'll say pretender, but I mean they'll probably be they'll do the Bulls thing and win 38, 39 games again. But they're a fun watch. They play really fast and shoot a lot of threes, and they have a cast of intriguing guys. And so I have nothing against them, but I just don't believe in that high end personnel on either end to really drive a deep playoff run.
Yeah, totally agree. Like of all the undefeated teams, the least amount of faith in them keeping this pace would be the Bulls. But they are, to your point, they're fun to watch. Like they're doing a lot of fun things out there, especially offensively. Matas Buzelis getting downhill is exciting for Bulls fans. I'm definitely intrigued by Noah Sengu. I want to see how that looks. But yeah, I'm there with you. Any team that is relying on Josh Giddey and Nikola Vucevic to be their anchors of some sort, like to
prominent members of the lineup.
Yeah, like you're going to play both of them in the same starting unit. You're probably going to lose the playoff series because of defense. I'm just that. Next, the Bucks 3-1. Tough one.
Oh man, this is tough. I think for me, given where I entered the season on them, it's too early for me to change my tune on pretender. But like I said earlier, I definitely was too low on them, and I think they're certainly better than I anticipated. I think I just didn't bank enough on how good Rollins is with the ball in his hands and how easy life can be, or how easy Giannis can make life for everyone else. So I'll say pretender, but I could certainly see this changing. I try to kind of wait 15, 20 games in before I really make firm stances, so I don't want to backtrack on the analysis I had coming in. But I am impressed with them. This is not me being critical of them. This is me waiting for more information before I fully change how I felt about them. But I could certainly see myself being wrong. I was really, really impressed by the way they played against the Knicks for a multitude of reasons. Not just one game, but that one really popped because I think the Knicks are going to be really dang good this year.
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more of like Giannis in a rock fight every night, looking up and down this roster over the summer, and they've just been shooting lights out. Like we hit on with like they're spacing around Giannis. They're getting like the most. If you're just gonna build everything around Giannis, like it seems like they're maximizing his skill set a little bit more with the personnel they have chosen. Because of how wide open the East is, I'm going to lean towards contender. You have Giannis, you have championship pedigree. It might just be Giannis at this point, but they have technically been there and done it before. And the East is wide open. Like I think Giannis and friends has a chance to win any playoff series on his own. And if he actually has some 3-point shooting help, that could definitely swing a series. The big question is kind of that defense. Like they've always been elite defense, shooting a lot of threes under Bud, but they don't have Bud anymore, and their defense is ranked 13th at the moment. They lost Brook Lopez as well, but they bring in Miles Turner, so that's an adjustment. We'll see if it's a 1-to-1 or how much it helps. To your point, he should be more mobile on that end at this age, especially compared to what Brook was doing. So I'm going to lean contender just because of how open the East is. But like I said, maybe I'm being a little too nice with these standards. The East, I feel like, is so wide open. I might have some that surprise you here. But let's see. We'll go to the next team would be the Miami Heat, 3-1, just like the Bucks in the East.
They're pretenders. I think they rank pretty well offensively, but it's a lot of open court play, a lot of early offense chances. I don't trust the half court creation. I'm pretty skeptical of offenses that get off to that play really well in the regular season, but it's because they do a lot of quick hitting early offense stuff that just dries up in the playoffs. Happened to him like the Kings a few years ago. Obviously, they played a great defense in the Warriors that year, but they're pretenders, but they've been fun. Hawkes seems to be having a little bit of a resurgence. Bam, hasn't shut the ball from two, but is letting it fly, handling the ball a lot, driving. So I'll say pretenders, but I have enjoyed watching them so far, and I have long been a Norman Powell enthusiast, and this offense seems very free flowing and to his liking, which I enjoy.
Man, this is one where part of me really wants to say contender. I don't know if I can get there though, just because of looking at the rest. They're basically this and one other team are right on the line for me, but if they're they are technically so far this season first on defense as well and fifth on offense. So like I totally agree. Like transition offense is normally something like teams that don't have as much offensive talent try to do to try to increase the possessions and get more shots, get easier shots. I think it's kind of what the Magic have tried to do, not so effectively this year as well. But Miami's done it without Tyler Hero. Like they're their best offensive option. They've just been playing this like team ball. I think Bam Adebayo had a quote something along the lines of, "I don't think we ran a single play that game," to the point of like they're just playing a scheme out here. They're not playing pickup, but they're just running and gunning and like probably have a few base things that they do, and they just run it into the ground without a ton of play calling. And maybe that's helpful if you're lacking some offensive talent, missing your best scorer, just trying to get easy buckets. So like I agree. I don't think that scoring works in the playoffs. They do have I do think their lineup in the East is solid. It's another in this probably better than the Hornets, but not quite contender tier. So I will land on pretender here now that I've talked it out with you. I like where we ended up there. Next up, we got the Cavaliers.
I will say contender, but I will note that is contingent on them stopping the Evan Mobley primary initiator experience. I know some of that is born from Darius Garland being out and Max Strus, but and they don't have a lot of options beyond that, but it's been pretty ugly so far. I know they're trying stuff, but it's a lot of pull-up jumpers, a lot of long twos from a guy who is a skyscraping lob threat and a really good finisher and a good post mismatch scorer. That's just kind of me being cheeky in terms of ending that, but yeah, I think they're still contenders. No, it hasn't looked great so far at all the time this year, but Hunter missed a game or two. Strus has been out. Garland's out. There's a lot missing there, and they're still 3-2. I understand why they're trying the Evan Mobley primary creator experience, but it's not going well. And I hope for everyone's sake that Garland can return soon, even Strus, and make things easier and kind of fit that puzzle as it should be. Because as fun as it is to watch Evan Mobley hit the occasional pull-up three, most of those possessions are not resulting in such a pretty manner. And I think it's been a massive detriment to him and the entire offense. And I hope for all their sakes so they can kind of get things in the right hierarchy once people are healthy.
Yeah, to that point, only 17th on offense so far this year after like a world-beating offense last year. A little bit of a change. You lost Ty Jerome and bring in Lonzo. What's interesting is let's see. It's not the creation. It's not the shot creation, but Evan Mobley's, let's say, like giving him the ball and making him more of like a playmaking hub is something I credited to their success last year. But not necessarily him creating shots for himself, more so him creating shots for the team.
And passing the ball at the elbows in the mid post and working from there. Right now, he's like dribbling the ball up the floor and like taking pull up threes and like running high pick and rolls. That's not really the way. I mean, he's not Giannis. Like,
right.
He's a very
exactly.
good player.
Right. Exactly. It's more of like a Draymond handoff hub or a Bam Adebayo handoff hub than like a self creator. Like you said, Giannis just running all the plays. So it's been interesting to say the least. The results have not been great, but they are 3-2. They have won some of the games, but not at the point differential and offensive rating that they would like. And you're missing Garland and Strus. You will change some things, but for their sake, like you said, hopefully they get Garland back and kind of resort to what they were doing before. I don't mind
mixing in some of the Mobley stuff. I just think they've really dove into it. Some of it is out of need, like I said, with no Garland and Strus. Those guys are handling the ball behind Mitchell, but it feels like they're overdoing it. But at the same time, you might as well experiment.
Got to run something.
And 164 games after, and it didn't matter in the playoffs. So you might as well take this undermanned opportunity to kind of see what your All NBA superstar can do as a creator. But that was more getting on my chest that it has not been very enjoyable to watch, despite being a massive Evan Mobley supporter.
No, I hear you. I mean, if the shots aren't going in, things can look clunky as a viewer very quickly. We got and if I didn't say it, I do view them as a contender this year. I'd probably have them as number one, and I think because of their success last year, to the point like compared to say the Magic, who are less proven in the playoffs, like the Cavs can kind of get away with a little experimentation right now. Like they know who they are, generally speaking, in the East. Like they're on year 4 of this core 4, I think, or year 3 or 4 of
I think 4.
I think it's 4.
Yeah.
But they've been together for a hot minute. They've built out their starting unit. They've built out kind of their rotation from there. Like they kind of know who they are and know what they do best, so they can always get back to that once everyone's healthy. So I don't mind them experimenting a little bit now, like we're saying, much very early in the season. See if they have some other options they can go to down the line. Whereas like Orlando hasn't proven that much in the playoffs, and it seems like they're also doing experimentation type of things at the moment, and I'm okay with it. But if you fall too far behind without ever kind of like figuring out your base sets of like what you're great at, it can get a little tricky soon. So it's a tough one for Orlando, but I'm sure we'll get to them in a moment here. We got the Pistons are the tie for the 5th seed, 3-2.
They're pretenders to me. I think there's not enough reliable creation beyond Cade, and I think as good as Cade is, I think he's still something of a flawed creator. I think he has too many nights where there's the shooting efficiencies isn't there because of how poor of a finisher he is and how mercurial the jumper can be. I think they're trying to be a defensive minded team, running a lot of lineups with Asar and Holland and Stewart out there, but there's just not enough shooting and creation. So I'll say pretender. I just don't think the high end talent or like kind of the harmonic talent is quite there for me to see them as a true contender.
Yeah, they're right on the line for me. Loved what they did last year. Thought they really just finally gave Cade like a real NBA rotation that complemented his skill set, and they won more than half their games because of it. Cade's an All NBA star, but I think all that gives them like a high floor, making the playoffs. Definitely could see a 4 or 5 seed, maybe win a round, but that's kind of where I will call them. Maybe even a second round if they want, if they can. But I don't quite see them making it all the way through the finals. So I will also say pretender for all those reasons, and that leaves us to the Knicks, 2-2.
I'll say contender. I know it's been up and down for them so far. They're getting up a ton of threes, lot more like early offense, ball movement, and player movement in general on a possession. Cat is really still adjusting. Feels like he hasn't quite figured out how to like where all his touches are going to come from, which I think is pretty important, especially for a big man. But also say contender. Brunson's awesome. I still believe in the talent. I think Bridges looked better defensively this year to start than maybe last couple of years, which is encouraging. I still trust OG to be OG. I would say Mitch hasn't played, but you never know what you're going to get from Mitch, so I can't really bake that into a point in their favor long term. So, but I'll say contender still. I believe they're going to figure this out offensively. Cat's going to find his spots. Brunson's still Brunson. I like them taking more threes. I like them moving the ball, moving around more. I do want this extra ball and player movement to more often result in different, better shots than they got under Tibbs. I think, it's cool to pass the ball more and cut and have 45 cuts and baseline cuts, but if it still results in like a OG Anunoby turnaround fadeaway or a Mikal Bridges pull-up jumper, like you got those last year. So I'm just hoping they can kind of improve the shot quality while they tweak their system. Maybe I haven't caught the right games, but beyond kind of taking more threes from good shooters, which is an improvement, it doesn't always feel like the added window dressing has resulted in better process all the time or better results. I don't know how to phrase that because like process is like the way you go about it, but the same like where your shot's ending up, I should say, because you can't necessarily control like if you make the shot, but the quality of shot I think is important. So I'll say contender, but monitoring how actually fruitful this different offensive system is beyond taking more threes, which I do think is useful, but not necessarily the end all be all.
Yeah, and they're 8th on defense so far, so they're still competing on that end. I really like their personnel, the roster and the personnel. Like I think the big wings, Mikal and OG, combined with Imrob and Josh Hart, like that's some elite defense right there that you can build around. And you also have some elite offensive players with Brunson and Towns, and obviously OG and Mikal kind of go both ways when it comes to their impact. So it's obviously there. We've seen what this team has built the last few years. But yeah, I'm definitely interested to see just how the new scheme works. Because like you said, like if you're ultimately getting some of the same looks and not really, if you're getting the same shots, like you're not really seeing much of the improvement that you were hoping for with a total regime change. Like you probably like personally, I would have liked to see maybe like unleash Cat as a pick and pop threat on a high volume, like really unleash his just what he does offensively, so he can either shoot or attack the closeout and drive, where he seems to be at his best. But that's just one example. Just involving Cat probably first and foremost as much as possible on the offensive end as a shooter, I think would really maximize this offense. And we'll see if it changes anymore or
Well, I
how
think
it looks.
that's interesting here is that like he does have the second highest 3-point rate of his career, but his usage rate's at a career low, or the
Mm,
second lowest of his career. So that's kind of the
okay.
interesting point, right? He's taking a lot of threes still, but like he still needs the interior touches that haven't really been there, the post ups, the elbow stuff. So just kind of curious if they balance that long term. And he did miss. I think he was injured a little. He had a bit of a quad injury, maybe that maybe hampering some of what he can do as a driver and post up threat. But yeah, it's right. It's a balance between he's taking a lot of threes given how many shots he's allocated, but the shots aren't as high as they were last year, maybe the last few years. But I'm
You want
still
to
pretty
see
optimistic.
him like operated through more in the post and the elbow is where we're getting.
I just want a mix of like they do the trailer three stuff a lot, but I just want a mix between high volume three guy because he's an elite 3-point shooter and still kind of a guy who can operate inside the arc. And I want to see kind of how creatively Mike Brown can deploy that inside the arc stuff because I think it's clear that they're prioritizing him as a spacer, but he's not like just Kelly Olynyk, right? I mean, I guess that's not really a fair comp because Olynyk was a pretty talented offensive player too in his heyday, but you get what I'm saying, right? He's not just like a Mike
Yeah, it's
Muscala.
like the Kevin Love on the Cavs role. Like he kind of
Yeah.
got reduced to the one specific role, even though he's one of the best post up threats and obviously rebounders, transition guys,
And
back
there's no
passers.
Kyrie to Jalen Brunson's LeBron in this scenario, right? You need
Right,
Cat is kind of the Kyrie in this sense, which is a weird comp, but there's no other number two to kind of
right. Like he's not clearly the third
yeah.
option in the pecking order. Like if anything, he's arguably the best scorer on the team. And if as soon as he got there, I thought like immediately it was like he might just, even though there's three all-stars on this team, he might just walk in as their leading scorer because Brunson is a point guard who might end up setting him up more, and he's such a skilled shooter and scorer around this defensive front court and all that. Like I immediately thought he would light it up, and he did. I think him and Brunson averaged about 25 points a game throughout the year. I'm not sure where they ended up, but that to me, like clearly there's something there. Like he, as you're saying, he's more than a shooter. Get some scoring out of him and try to get that scoring gravity to help create some more offense. And if you can do it creatively as a coach to maximize your spacing and get better shots, even better there. And I think all of these reasons give the Knicks a really high floor to make the playoffs and have a good chance of winning a round or two. And they're contenders because if they figure it out, the East is wide open and they have the talent where they could easily be a top 3 seed in the East and figure things out as the playoffs roll around if the timing goes right. Which leads me to my the next team in the East. Go two more teams, I think, and then maybe do the general East. But we got the Magic here. I'm going to skip to the Magic. Pretender or contender?
I'll still say contender. I
Yeah.
know it's been rough, um, but like one, I think they've gotten some pretty like the defense definitely needs to be better. They have lacked the point of attack tone setter that made them such a good defense the last 2 years. I know part of it is Suggs, being on a minutes limit, not playing back to backs, but they've also been pretty unlucky in terms of shooting luck, defensively, and I do think and I've been harsh on Paolo at times throughout his career, kind of the way he approaches the game. I do think the approach is a lot better to start the year. He's been a monster getting downhill, but he just can't hit a shot that isn't at the rim inside the paint to save his life or a three. But he's drawing the most fouls of his career. He's got half his shots are coming at the rim, despite him not being a super explosive vertical athlete. Like, and that does give him issues at times as a finisher. But like, if you take 50% of your shots at the rim and make 60% of them, even if that's bad, like on average, that's still a really good shot overall. So I think he's going to figure it out. I think Bane probably needs to better balance the driving with the shooting off the catch, but I still think he'll have some shooting luck there. Um, I think Mo Wagner will help a ton whenever he comes back if he's back to the level he was at last year, just as a legit scoring threat inside and as a great screener. I think Wendell does a lot of little things offensively, but he just can't really score the dang ball. And Goja, I'm not a huge fan of. He's obviously not much of a threat offensively beyond the offensive rebounding, and the defense I think is pretty poor outside of the highlight blocks. I think the positioning is pretty bad, and he goes for a lot of blocks. But the point being is I think they can still be a really good defense once Suggs gets into the swing of things. And I've liked how Paolo has looked this year, despite the shots not falling. I think it's been really easy to pile on him just because the efficiency's been terrible. But if you actually have been watching these games, he has been a much improved offensive player who is just bashing his way to the rim and drawing a lot of fouls. And when he doesn't draw fouls, he is shooting the ball a lot at the rim. And I think the passing is coming along again. I think he's kind of a inconsistent passer, but the talent can really be there as a passer. So also say contender. I think you can see a lot of the outline of why they traded for Bane, even if he hasn't been great this year. I do think his defense needs to improve a lot. He has been a massive negative for them on that end, whether it's a screen navigation or off-ball awareness. But I just think there's enough foundational pieces here to be a really good defense still with an improved offense, even if it's not like a top 10 offense. So I'll say a contender, but the wider the sample gets of still struggling on both ends, obviously it's going to make more concern, but we're still only 5 games in. And I just can't stress enough how much better Paolo looks in his approach for the most part, despite the numbers not being there. I do think if he's not a 15% shooter from floater range and 3-point range, you're going to see a much more efficient player this year. So that's the hope. Of course, that could change. You know, approaches aren't static. They change as you see different defenses and you feel different physically. But Paolo's improved approach has me pretty optimistic, and I think Bane can help him a lot, even if he hasn't scored the ball well yet. Either of them, I should say.
Yeah, the shot selection for Paolo was just a huge factor. I've been saying that if, one reason his efficiency is maybe less than people would want is the shot selection. He takes a lot of tough mid-range jumpers and always has. But to your point, like, he's taking more shots at the rim. I would make the comparison to like their All-Star years. Him and Zion both averaged the same amount of points and drew the same amount of fouls. But Zion was just massively more efficient, and it was obvious why. Zion took all of his shots at the rim, and Paolo took half of his shots in the mid-range, and that efficiency just kind of speaks for itself. Where, like, even if you're, like, to your point, even if you're not the most efficient at the rim, simply by taking the shot at the rim, it is a much more efficient look than just about any other shot out there. Plus all the offensive rebounding stuff we talked about with second chance points, especially for a Magic team that relies on that for offense. So yeah, there's a ton to be said about the Magic. I've written a ton of words already on some things that are, let's say, going wrong so far. It reminds me a little bit of like the 4 or 5 games they played after losing Paolo before Franz kind of took over last year when they unleashed Franz on like a 25 to 30 game run with Paolo out early in the season where Franz put up all NBA all-star level numbers efficiently. The Magic were winning. They were still the top 4 seed. So there was like a 5-game stint between those two things where the whole team just kind of looked a mess. Like it just was not in sync. There was a lot of randomness at play. They were trying Jalen Suggs a lot at the point guard before he got hurt. They weren't playing much through Franz. But something clicked after about 5 games where they just said, all right, we're done experimenting. We're going to run Franz pick and rolls as the primary way to score for this offense because they know it's the most reliable option. And then the team went on a crazy long streak. They were winning a lot of games at home. They were still the 4 seed, and they were doing it all without Paolo. And that was basically half of a season. I mean, it was a good 30-game sample size. So it was legit enough. So this moment for the Magic kind of reminds me of that, where they're just not totally in sync yet. They don't exactly know where to be, know exactly what to do. And I don't exactly know who to blame for all that. I mean, you can blame. Everyone wants to blame somebody, come up with a problem, and say this is what's wrong. There's like 30 things wrong with the Magic right now. They're missing all their free throws. They're missing all their 3-point shots. They're hardly playing defense. They're playing really fast and crashing the glass, and that might be making it harder to play defense. Jalen Suggs is only about half available, so they're not really getting a normal rotation. They've had to like kind of it's tough to plug and play new personnel. It's one thing to like have a healthy rotation to start the year and figure out your top nine and start building out kind of what you do best. And it's tough when you're already kind of missing one of your top nine, let alone your top four, and now you're already changing everyone's roles before they even adjusted to their first role. So you end up with like Tyus Jones starting and getting destroyed by Trae Young throughout the game because he's not really a starting defender level point guard. That's just not his game. He's a more of a backup in for his career, even if he's one of the best backups in the NBA. He's a great decision maker, playmaker, can hit the open three, assist a turnover guy, and run pick and rolls. But if you're not really asking him to do almost any of that and just having him be a spot up shooter who plays connector passer and have to play defense on Trae Young, it's gonna be a little tough. It's a tough ask for him. So that's just one example. I totally agree on Bane as well. I think Bane's kind of picking his spots a little bit still, kind of like almost like letting the game come to him when I don't know if he necessarily realizes like this team just needs him to shoot. Like, just please, for the love of God, shoot first and think later. Like we need 10 threes a game, and that would be fine.
There was a play last. I was watching the Pistons game this morning. There's a play last night where he like ran off an Iverson cut, caught the ball, like had a three, shot faked, like dribbled into like maybe a long two. Saw Anthony Black was open instead, like threw a nice pass. Anthony Black missed a corner three, and it's like Anthony Black is a bad shooter. You're a great shooter. Like just let it rip, dude. Like I know you're trying to help the entire offense, but like sometimes the best offense is like one of the best shooters in the league just taking the semi-contested threes. Like they didn't trade for you to be like a wishy-washy 3-point shooter. They traded for you to be like a gunner who can also get to the rim and run pick and rolls. So the other thing too, I will say is like they got to lean way more into just those three guys, Bane, Wagner, and Paolo being their main players. Like Suggs and Anthony Black with over 20% usage rate. I know some of that's it's a permanent stat, but like I don't need to see eight Anthony Black pick and rolls a game. I don't need to see 10 Jalen Suggs pick and rolls a game. Suggs is definitely a better option there because he can just do more, but I still don't need to see like I want Suggs to take spot up threes, cut, attack closeouts, be a connective passer who sprinkles in the occasional pick and roll. Like I don't need to see you come out of a timeout when the team's gone an 8-0 run and it sets up with like Franz and Paulo off the ball or one of them off the ball and Anthony Black is handling it. It's like that's just a terrible allocation of resources. I get that Anthony Black is a pretty useful driver and he's not a very good off-ball threat, but like it still doesn't. I would still rather have the ball in Paolo or Franz's hands or Bane's hands and trust them to make the right play there. So a lot of it is just, as you kind of said, figuring out the roles, and it's going to take time. They got to figure, like it can't be that confusing. Like I don't know, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but like your three highest paid guys should be who are your best offensive players should be having the ball over defensive minded like combo wing guards who are like shaky ball handlers.
When you put it like that, it becomes very straightforward. I totally agree with that sentiment, and I think what it looks like is like the team is still just experimenting with what the best version of them is. Like, is Desmond Bane shooting gravity best on the ball in a pick and roll where he draws two and everybody else is open? Is it best where he's spotting up on the wing to pull everyone out that way while all the other action goes out on the right wing? So you kind of have him as an outlet threat. And, Franz seems to be best on the ball. Paulo seems to be best either on the ball or short rolling off the ball. Neither of them really. I mean, Paulo is a catch and shoot guy, but not quite at the level of a lot of other shooters, but he's becoming more of a catch and shoot 3-point threat for sure, at least definitely compared to Franz. So that I think is the question here for the Magic, is just what is the offensive layout, the scheme that maximizes all these guys best? And I agree with you. It starts with
it ain't Anthony Black pick and roll.
It's not Anthony. We figured out one thing. I agree though, like that on the one hand, that's like what he does best, but it's just not conducive necessarily for what this team needs. So it's tough to find that balance there. And part of that also, like you said, Mo Wagner, best bench scoring big in the NBA last year. He's been out for half a year. They're missing some of that offensive punch off the bench. And, ideally everyone is down a peg in their roles, playmaking wise, but I'm with you. Like I'm interested to see, like, is the best version of this offense, does it look more like the Warriors with a lot of off-ball movement, or does it look more like the Nuggets with spamming Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, or in this case Desmond Bane, Paolo Banchero like pick and rolls and handoffs? Like, is that where it looks best? I think it starts with Franz pick and roll. We're set. Any lineup, any matchup, doesn't matter. Run it. That's 30% of the game needs to be that, basically.
He's got the lowest on-ball rate of his career. It's like
His usage is really low. And I will add, his synergy efficiency wasn't like jumping off the page. I think all three of their stars pick and rolls were about 0.8 points per possession when they were running as initiators. But again, all of these are small samples. They change really fast.
Yeah. But my point is that like his on-ball rate last year was almost
super
28%.
Low.
This year it's under 14%. I know some of that is boosted last year with Paolo missing half the year, but I mean he should not have a lower on-ball rate than like Suggs, Tyus, or Anthony Black. I don't mean to beat up on these three guards, but they're flawed guards who should not control the offense. They're much less superior players. So yeah, I think and maybe they're pretenders because they never quite figure out the hierarchy and the preferences this year, but I just think so much has gone wrong and they've still been in 3 of their losses. I think they got their butts kicked against Detroit the second half, but they were in it against, for most of it against Philly. They were in it against Atlanta. They were in it against I can't remember their other game they lost, but I'm pretty sure it was a close game.
They've been in it. I mean, they're high floor like that. That is
still early. Still, I think there's just so much stuff they can figure out pretty seamlessly offensively. I will say on defense, they really gotta figure out. They just have not been as physical and rangy and as well rotated as prior years. I think is a pretty big concern. I will say that would be if they don't figure it out, it's because their offense is just middling and their defense is like top 10 rather than the top 3 or 4 unit. I think it can be, and it's been top 2 the last 2 years.
Right, that's been their calling card. So it's been a major shift to see the pace increase and see the defense kind of like almost wither away with it. But I do think there is something here too. This team has a high floor because of the personnel and all the things they do well, where they can experiment a little bit here, but they can't let the season get away from them. Like you just have to kind of, I don't know, figure out what you do best, run that a little more, and then experiment from there. It can't just be all one big experiment the entire time, or things should go bad quickly here. And things are already getting a little. Fans are not happy. Let's say that way when it comes to expectations, and that's the rough part of expectations. Sometimes, that means fans are going to be more critical as well. But I could talk about the Magic for hours. I do still have them as a contender as of now, but let's just say this last week hasn't strengthened that case at all. The
confidence interval in that contender statement is lower for me than it was a week and a half ago.
Yeah, it's lowering by the moment. I'm gonna throw one last East team at you, the Atlanta Hawks, and then the rest of the East we'll just do as a general group if you have any contenders or pretenders from the rest. But let's shout out the Hawks here. They had a lot of preseason expectations, and I think similar to the Magic, it's 1 week. There's been some tough outings. I would not be surprised at all if these are your 7 and 8 seed or 4 and 5 seed or whatever it may be to end the year. But to start it's been a little rough. So have you seen enough to adjust them one way or another here?
I think they're a pretender. I think Trae Young has lost a good bit of burst. He had an Achilles injury last year, which really hampered him. I thought maybe it was just a last year thing, and maybe he was going to get in shape. But I think that lessened burst really kind of limits his creation upside or his scoring upside. I should say he's still a brilliant passer who can generally get paint touches, but I think they need more scoring juice. And now he's dealing with an MCL injury, I believe. So I'll say pretender because I just don't think Trae Young is quite the same caliber of player he was a couple of years ago. Still very good, but I think they need that dominant offensive player that for Trae Young, for Trae Young to be that I don't know he can be anymore physically, and I just don't quite have him there. I think they were too reliant on a lot of other flawed offensive players to carry the load in his stead. So I'll say pretender because I just don't think Trae is there physically to be the supernova scorer he's been at times throughout his career that he hasn't quite been the last year plus now.
Yeah, he maybe it's athletically or something, just not quite the same burst, the quite quick step there. Maybe, but it's hard to say he's lost a step. But I mean, when you're talking about incredible athletes, uber athleticism. Yeah, like that. Relatively speaking, sure. Like we're not trying to say like the dude is washed and he's out of the league. Like he just lost a step. There's a range there of losing steps, but I'm with you. I think before the season, you would have talked me into like I still have them in that Pistons tier, and I guess mostly in the Magic are around there. I just kind of thought the Magic would be a little like a tier above them, but maybe not. But still in that 4 or 5 range, and I still expect them to make the playoffs. I still thought they might be like a year or two away from truly contending because of the age and because of the steps they had taken. But I really love their roster and the deep and flanking Trey with defense. I still view Trey as a one-man offense, even with losing a step. But maybe it's not quite as efficient and nuclear as it was a few years ago in that sense. But
Yeah,
like
and that's well said. I think I would agree with that.
yeah, and if you give like, I still think like a Trey Young pick and roll is about of reliable of an offensive set, especially for one guy that you could ask for. Like the floater is mean, the pull up 3-point is tough to guard. He knows how to like the craftiness, like to the point of the steps. Like he can still be crafty like Chris Paul and create that contact and force fouls because he knows how to like maneuver the right way to get the positioning he wants to get the call. Is it great basketball to watch? I don't know about that, but it is how you take advantage of the rules to score effectively in this league. And the Magic saw it up close. I mean, they were in a maybe not a rock fight, but a back and forth game with the Hawks, and it came down to the last couple plays, and it mostly came down to Trey's ability to just force foul calls and with very little contact, I would say, but he has a knack for it. Like he's good at it, and it's really hard to defend him without fouling and without doubling, and that's where it comes in. So like in theory, you give him the 3-point volume of Kristaps catch and shoots now. Jalen Johnson looks electric. I like it, Asa Newell and some of the moves they've made, but not quite there. I'm gonna go with pretender as well. Just still kind of they could win a series or two. But not quite win it all. Lastly, here for the East, any other teams pop out to you as a fringe contender? Celtics. I don't know. Maybe the Hornets. We were really high on them. Anyone? The Pacers did just make the finals last year. Anyone popping out for you as a contender?
I think my 3 contenders are the Cavs, Knicks, and Magic. All off to, I would say, a little bit underwhelming starts, but it's so early. I just think every other team has too many flaws. I'm not saying that I don't think those teams. To me, when we're saying contenders, like I think like could they win it all if like generally the playing field was even. Obviously, that's not how the playoffs work. Things happen, teams get better, trades happen, or injuries happen, whatever it is. But I would just be a little surprised if any team besides those 3 represented the East and won it all. I shouldn't say represented the East because again, injuries happen and in season storylines and developments occur, but that's kind of where I'm at as a tier. So
and it's an interesting exercise because like making basically I think we'd probably agree most of these teams could make the finals, but actually beating one of whoever comes out of the West is like another challenge entirely.
Yeah, and I will say, like, to discredit myself already, felt like I was a step behind on the Pacers every moment of the season last year, so I could certainly be wrong on one of these teams that I've deemed a pretender. But yeah, I just think those 3 kind of at their best. Even if I don't know if I would necessarily group the Cavs, Knicks, and Magic all in one tier together, I think they're just a cut above if they figure things out. And I think the Cavs are going to be fine. I think the Knicks are going to be fine. And the Magic, not as confident, but I've watched enough of their games this year already. I mean, they've only played 5, but that I just see a lot of easy paths to them figuring it out and kind of being good enough to make the finals, even if I wouldn't like pick them to make the finals over the Cavs or the Knicks or anything like that. But I think they've got a pretty high ceiling still.
Yeah, and we pretty much only talked about the playoff teams, so I think even the pretenders maybe they do have like a non-zero chance at least of making the finals, let alone winning the whole thing. But if you made it to pretenders on this list, then you're probably a playoff team in the East, and therefore have a chance to make the finals because we've seen the Heat and the Pacers make these huge playoff runs in the East when it wasn't wide open, and let alone now.
Who knows? Maybe Tatum continues his ridiculously fast recovery and comes back and is himself and. That's
probably the one here, right?
Yeah,
that's like the one left.
they lost other talent, in Kristaps and Drew and Cornette. But I mean, they still have a pretty good team. So I mean, a lot of again, it's contingent on
How
Tatum
the heck
playing.
do they have the seventh best defense with like no front court? like
Yeah, I don't
who's
know. I've
who's
only
rebounding for this
I've only
Celtics
caught in
team?
full their first game of the year against the Sixers when they gave a bajillion points. So
Yeah,
I'm not entirely sure how they're good. And they have Anthony Simons in their rotation, who God bless him, but he's not a particularly good
not known for
defender.
the defense. Well,
But
you have enough time here to run through the West. I know we've been going pretty long.
yeah, if we can do it quicker than the
Yeah,
East,
we don't have to break down every time. Maybe
yeah,
we run through which tier you have the team in and go over our thoughts at the end here for to sum it up. We'll run
yeah.
through the West. You tell me, pretender or contender? The Oklahoma City Thunder.
Contender, reigning champs are undefeated despite litany of injuries already. It's easy.
Easy. On to the next one. Contender for me as well. Spurs, 4-0, 2 seed.
Ooh. I want to say, I'll say contender. Fuck it.
Oh, he said it. He did it.
I
Wemby.
don't care. I think they'd probably be the last team in that tier for me, but I just think they've got enough going with a dominant player at the helm. So I'll say contender to have some fun. I'm a believer in the Spurs team. They would be my last team in this hypothetical tier that I haven't even fleshed out. But I feel like I was so stingy on the East when it came to contenders. I'll be a little more welcoming in the West.
Give them a little chance. I dig it. I mean, from what we've seen so far from the Spurs, it's been pretty hard to deny. Even though it's only 4 games, who the heck knows? But they've been playing lights out. They have an MVP Depoy type of guy, level player in Wemby, and are playing great on both ends. I mean that sure sounds like a contender. We'll see if they keep it up. I would say before the season, I would not have said contender, but from what I've seen so far, I'm definitely leaning that way. Like it's just hard not to at least give them a chance. Like they could win it all now. It went definitely a little more than just non-zero to now. But to jump to the next team here, the Warriors, 4-1, 3 seed.
I'll say contender. I think they've looked very good. I think it's a ridiculous amount of skill and feel and complementary skill sets with Steph, Jimmy, Draymond, and Horford. Seems like they've got some depth emerging as well. Kuminga's buying into his role, really playing well. Moody's finally back as well. So I'll say contender here.
I like it. I'm right there with you. Contender for the Warriors. They were incredible after the Jimmy trade. They added DeAnthony Melton, or got him back. Will Richard lighting it up as a rookie. They added Al Horford is who I'm trying to think of, and Kuminga seems to be okay at the moment. I am interested by the Kuminga lineup. I think if you're gonna have him here, if you're gonna try to make this work, you gotta start him. You gotta trust him to be a starter level guy, mostly because of the rotation they have. I guess you could bring him off the bench, but he seems to want to be a starter very much so, and wants the opportunity. He's probably your best big wing defender left on the roster, so you get that out of him. And if he's willing to accept the ancillary off-ball role in that starting unit, and you also get the upside of maybe he goes off for a game for 20 points on when maybe Jimmy doesn't have it, but Kuminga's getting his, that is. You just want to get the most out of the situation when both sides are not exactly thrilled about what's going on, but he kind of matches a need, so they're getting the most out of it, and they're 4-1. They're carrying on what they were doing last year. I mean, they're not the top heavy Warriors of the last few years. They have depth. I think they're back to being a full blown contender roster rotation. I don't think it's just if Steph can go off for a whole series, we have a chance. This is a full-blown team led by Steph again. So that to me is bona fide contender. Off the top of my head, I don't know if this team is any less talented than the Warriors that just won it all a few years ago. They probably have a little more talent now than that team. So I think they're definitely contenders in my book. But maybe it's not quite there. But I mean, they didn't have Jimmy and Horford.
I think that Warriors team had a little more front court versatility in it, with just you go by lead. So you had Draymond playing a little higher level. You had Otto Porter giving you some stuff. You still have Jimmy and
Otto was
lesser
great
Draymond,
that year.
but I think they were a little more versatile and juiced up with the spacing as well. But
Yeah,
maybe
definitely
the
older
Nuggets.
now. Definitely older now.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
But I think in general, I think it's a fair statement for sure that they could be as talented as that
Yeah, so
22 team.
definitely got a shot here. To next team in the top four, the Nuggets. I kind of like this top four as its own tier of like the legitimate contenders maybe so far this year. But so I do have the Nuggets as a contender. How about you?
Yeah, I think contender pretty easily. I mean, they lost that heartbreaker I mean, not heartbreaker, but lost that great game, overtime game to open their season to the Warriors, and they've just you know, destroyed three teams since, all not really contenders. I mean the Timberwolves without Anthony Edwards are not a contender. With all due respect to everyone else there, the Suns are not. Pelicans with nobody there. Anthony Edwards didn't play against the Timberwolves. That's why, or against the Nuggets. So I'm saying that. But
Oh, okay.
Jamal looks good. He's moving with as much verb as kind of we've seen the last couple of years. More options are in the non-Jokic minutes. They're still kind of integrating Cam Johnson into the things. It seems like he's kind of not quite figured things out, and they're still 3-1 with like a plus 15 net rating or something like that. Again, not
Yeah.
playing world beaters his last three games, but I think they're in a really good spot. So I think I have no reason to move off if I felt about the Nuggets coming into the year. But I am curious kind of what level kind of Valanciunas, Tim Hardaway, and Bruce Brown are at, in the playoffs, and kind of whether they can be exploited. But
Yeah.
still in the contender tier.
And similar to the Warriors, like if the Thunder were like runaway tier of their own contenders last year, which I think they were, and the Nuggets and Warriors were kind of like on the outside looking in last year to me. This year they might have not caught up to the Thunder, but they definitely have caught up to like they are as good as any other contender in the league. Like they definitely seem as once again as talented as the championship Nuggets team a few years back, if not more so, where really they had this incredible summer. They find the perfect fifth role player in KCP that summer, balances the lineup perfectly, and they win it all. And this year they go out, in theory, upgrade MPJ to Cam Johnson, or if not an upgrade, at least a 1-for-1 swap, and seem to bolster the depth elsewhere. It not seems to, did bolster the depth elsewhere, where arguably the best depth Jokic has actually had is this unit just between all the role guys that know their role, like Bruce Brown, THJ, and Jonas off the bench. And their top five net rating, offense and defense to start the year. As you say, they're blowing teams out. Definitely contender to me. I think they have been one of the like only teams perennially that deserve to be in that contender status the last few years, and they're right back up there with an MVP candidate, arguably best player in the world, and Nikola Jokic leading the way. So when you have that and your top three, top four, and your depth is figuring it out, like they're really minimizing how many holes they have on the roster. So definitely think those four to me stand out above the rest. But there are a few other teams here that I think have a clear claim as well to one of these tiers. Let's go with the. I was gonna say the Lakers, but let's do the Grizzlies first. The Grizzlies are the 5 seed at the moment. Do you view them as a contender?
I've got them as pretender. I think there's just too much kind of investment in youth that I think they're going to prioritize to experiment, and I don't think there's enough high end talent there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't trust Jaren as an offensive player in the playoffs, unfortunately, and I think he's pretty key to their offense. So just kind of missing some pieces, but I think they're in a pretty good place long term with some pretty intriguing young guys, and they obviously have all those picks now from your Magic. So they're in a fine place, but I think you always expect this to kind of be a figure out what we have here team year than let's make sure that we make a deep playoff run. If we don't, people are going to get fired.
Yeah, and they are 3-2 despite having a negative point differential, which seems pretty impressive to do. But I'm with you. It's just a little too much of not sure what's going on outside of their top two, and their top two just kind of deal with mostly job, but just deals with being in and out of the lineup a lot, where I don't really like trust them full go. But really impressed, as we said, by Cedric Coward. Definitely think this is probably a 1 step backwards year for 2 step forwards type of idea for the Grizzlies, where they clearly saw like a fork in the road moment and moved off of Desmond Bane for picks. Like they chose a direction this summer of whether or not they were, if you're trying to compete or not trying to compete. I would say that having Bane helps you do that more than the picks. So they clearly made a choice of what they wanted to do at that moment. Does that necessarily mean they're tanking? No, not necessarily. It just means that they chose picks over proven talent for their team going forward, and also all the financial things involved of having big three salaries like that, of who you're going to build around. It's tough to build a team nowadays with three max salaries on the books, and if you don't view them as max players or whatever it might be, then you make tough decisions. But I'm with you. I view them as pretenders. I think ultimately they will kind of end up back in the lottery because of a combination of like just all it takes is one guy, Ja or Jaren, to miss time, and it can maybe get kind of rough pretty quickly. But generally, like what Memphis does, their scouting department always seems to find diamonds in the rough. They lost, Jake LaRavia to the Lakers, one of their diamonds in the rough that I thought was a nice prospect for them, but they lose him to another team. So we'll see. I do think they're in kind of a let's collect talent mode. We know we have two stars. We'll see if the two stars say anything or push to win now this season, because you would think like they're a lot closer to their prime than they are rebuilding. They're not really interested in being on a losing team or anything like that. So it's got to keep an eye on the Memphis Stars, but I'm with you. I think it kind of regresses to maybe like a play-in range French lottery type team here. We'll go with the pretender for them. We got the Lakers up next. This is where it gets a little tricky.
I'll say pretender. Excuse me, I didn't mean to pump fake there. I misspoke. I don't trust that defensive infrastructure. I think they're lacking some athleticism across the roster. I don't know what to expect of LeBron this year. That injury is pretty ominous. Seems like he's targeting to return in a couple weeks, but just don't know what to expect of him. Reeves and Luka are a hell of a combo, but I just think they're lacking kind of the defensive infrastructure and the athleticism to really be a contender this year. But the Austin Reeves show is very fun. I expect them to be very good, just a little below that tier of contention, but maybe that means I should put the Spurs a little below, but I like to have fun with it, so maybe I'll contradict myself a little bit there. That's how it goes.
That's how it goes. No, it's tough. The Lakers are right on the line for this exercise for me. I would say I would lean pretender as well, for all those reasons. The defense, like, it's just tough to win in the playoffs without having a defense. But I do like, obviously, Luka alone. Just having him like could mean a 50-win season. It could be a top 5 offense. It gives you a chance. It's like he is as much of a superstar as anyone else in this league. So like can't write him off completely. I do think they'll make the playoffs. And the LeBron factor is just a huge wild card. Like is he gonna accept his role and be happy playing here, possibly as the second guy next to Luka or the co-star next to Luka, instead of it kind of being his show? Like is he cool with all that? I think those are all big questions for how good this team can be, because in theory, like, they could have a really special offense with Luka, LeBron, and Reeves, and Ayton is a post-up threat down low. He might not be helping defensively.
Rui is a great complimentary scorer as well. So
yeah,
I just think they're lacking kind of enough answers to different questions. I mean, look at let's say their top 5 minutes played right now this year are Reeves, or minutes per game, excuse me. Reeves, Luka, Rui, Ayton, LaRavia, Marcus Smart. But maybe that's 6. But then you throw LeBron there, that's 7. Like, I think, I don't know. Like, then you have Vincent, you have Vanderbilt, Connect, like Jackson Hayes in there. Like, I just don't know who else I trust to give you minutes and kind of give you a different look that's really reliable in the playoffs. Even Smart is a guy who, you don't know if you can rely on him, to stay healthy. Can you rely on him as a scorer and offensive player, with the shooting and the decision-making kind of ebbing and flowing. So I just don't think they have enough answers to different problems that arise in the playoff setting. But I think at their best, they certainly can be pretty dang good, but you need more than one answer, and I don't know if they have enough answers in the playoffs with kind of their limited rotation and limited way to win with who they can kind of rely on, I guess. And for as good as Rui is as a complimentary scorer, I think he can kind of be phased out with some of his defensive struggles, and that puts him in a tough spot in the playoffs.
Yeah. I hear you. The rest of the rotation, a little bit of a question mark, and we'll see. I think we're both got them at pretenders there. We got the Blazers here, 3-2 as well. Feisty Blazers, fun defense.
Yeah, I'll say pretender. I just don't think they have enough offense. Drew Holiday's been kind of their primary creator alongside Shaden Sharp. I don't trust the decision making and creation results of those two. So I'll say pretender, but I think they'll kind of continue to vie for a playoff spot this year. They've been fun and they've been competing in a lot of these games against some pretty solid teams so far.
Yeah, the defense is legit. Ninth overall, but first in forcing turnovers so far, and I don't think that's gonna slow down very much. Like they have a calling card. Like they started flashing what their identity would be last year. They started to kind of remove some of the personnel that weren't a part of that defensive identity, bring in a Drew Holiday, the epitome of that identity. So yeah, I'm with you. Offensively, we might not know exactly kind of what they look like. I don't know if it'll be playoff team level good offensively, but they are 15th, I believe, so far in or 14th in offensive rating so far. But definitely, I do think they will be a fringe play-in team, if not late playoff team, because of that elite defense. And there's enough there offensively where they'll kind of it'll be any given night, like kind of relying on somebody going off is what it feels like for this team, because I'm not sure about the offensive system, but I totally believe the defense will travel and will be the calling card for this team for the whole season, like up and down the roster. And that alone will help them win games and make the playoffs. But that is a pretender status for this exercise. I don't think they're going to win a series even come playoff time, but you never know. But I do think them just making the playoffs would be a pretty good accomplishment for where they're at in the team building phase, and they're just trying to methodically improve, and it's a cool team building method to see where they're trying to build a defensive identity before they necessarily know who their star is. So do they change everything up if they bring in a star, or maybe they attract star players by building the identity? It's just interesting. Maybe they just build out a team and never worry about trying to acquire a star and just be a good team that knows who they are. So it's cool to just see a team built a little differently nowadays in the NBA. And that brings us to, so I also have them as pretender. That brings us to the Clippers, 2-2 Clippers, who just, totally staying out of the news. No one's paying attention to the Clippers these days.
Yeah, between off-court things and also just on-court additions, they've been a really, really quiet team the last 5 or 6 months. So good on them. I have them as pretenders. I don't trust their athleticism, and I don't trust their scoring pop beyond Harden and Kawhi, and I think you saw some limitations of both of them in the playoffs last year. I don't trust Beal to be a viable Powell replacement. I think Powell was really, really important to them despite his struggles in the playoffs last year, but I think some of that was injury related. I think Clippers fans were far too harsh and celebratory about his departure, and now they seem to kind of be reaping some of what they sowed in that regard. Maybe that's just me being biased because, again, I've already come out as a big Norman Powell enthusiast, but just don't trust them enough. I think they're too old and slow and don't have enough scoring creation to kind of really get it out the mud, despite, I think, going to be a really, really good defense again. I like what they've done on that in the last few years, but I just think the offense is going to run into too many dead ends that they can't back out of when it comes to a playoff setting or making a really, really deep run.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I really do like their defense. Zubats as well, like a real anchor for them, was really good for them last season as a defensive anchor and a handoff hub, kind of a short roll hub off of Harden. But maybe that could be more effective in the regular season, to your point as well. I do think I still have them as contenders. I really liked the additions they made this summer, just in terms of kind of bolstering the bench. It is kind of just throwing a lot of names at it in one sense, but I do think that a lot of these guys fit well together if they still have the juice, kind of thing. We're just not exactly sure who has how much left in the tank between all of these more experienced players. They didn't really send a lot of talent out, and they got quite a bit back in terms of talent. So I do like their depth, but to your point, how fast will it look out there? Will they look like the oldest team in the league come playoff time, and will they just kind of get run off the floor because of that? Because I think that's what they're risking when you have this many kind of older players, not necessarily there for their defense. So can you kind of outmaneuver them, other teams in the half court with your experience. Kawhi mid range shots and Harden pick and rolls is an offense, but do they have more out of that once defenses kind of take that away? That is an interesting element. I'm going to lean on contenders here because of the depth, but time and time again, the Clippers have shown us not to believe in them as contenders. So it's just kind of like until proven wrong.
I believe I picked them. I think I went on your pod last season and picked them to win a series, and they obviously did not win any series. So I'm right there with you, being betrayed by the Los Angeles Lakers.
One of these times, they'll get it right. One of these times, but
Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football.
Exactly. We just keep showing up, keep trying, keep kicking air. Clippers, one pretender, one contender. The Jazz are your 8 seed. I guess we're skipping the Jazz. The Rockets are your 9 seed. The Jazz, guess what? You're pretenders, Jazz. I decided it for you.
They are pretenders. I have enjoyed watching the Jazz this year. They play that gigantic lineup with Filipowski, Markkanen, and Walker Kessler out there. But yeah, pretenders for me with the Rockets. I just don't think they have the ball handling depth. I think they're really kind of pushing Amen Thompson to limits that he's not quite capable of yet. And I just think they're too reliant on guys who can't really initiate enough offense for themselves. I think Van Vliet, despite his scoring woes and shot selection woes at times, is really important to them as a guy who can handle the ball a ton and not turn it over and run a pretty good pick and roll. So I have them as pretenders. I was pretty low on them entering the year once the Van Vliet, relative to where they expected to be once the Van Vliet news came. So I have them as pretenders.
Man, I am not a very harsh critic here. I have them as a contender as well, but I totally agree with you. So maybe I need to.
When you're in the contending party for you,
yeah. Apparently,
my bouncer is a lot more stringent with his loud in. Apparently,
man. Apparently, I because I even said before, I feel most comfortable about the top 4 we talked about as contenders. But like, if you threw some of these other teams, say in the East, like I think they would probably have as much of a chance to make some noise as some of these other teams. But they're in the West, so it's a lot harder. I think a top 3 defense with Kevin Durant is going to have a shot. But like you said, everything else is kind of a pretty big question mark, especially the lack of point guard, the lack of ball handling. You lose FEV. Amen Thompson is more downhill force than he is natural point guard. It's just, where's the half-court playmaking coming from? That's not KD's cup of tea. Even if he's getting triple teamed, he's still going to probably take the shot and maybe even make it. Because, like you said, that's the one thing him and Wemby just have in common right away when you're even scouting. When I was scouting Wemby like 5 years ago, like, the jump shot's just that unblockable. Like everything else, he doesn't have to be the next Kevin Durant. Like, you're just not going to bother his shot release to the same point of Kevin Durant. And he can get that off anytime, anywhere, over anyone. So if he develops everything else, like, it's good night. So that's what we're seeing up close now. But in terms of the Rockets, I do think defense plus KD is something, and if they have enough of kind of 3-point volume around that, that's enough for me to get behind it as a possible contender. So I'm going to go with contender here. I'll say the Mavericks and Timberwolves, I guess, would be the only other teams that kind of pop to mind. Do you have either of them as contenders in this exercise?
Not the Mavs for sure, given how much I railed on their offensive context an hour ago. Wolves, I'll still leave it as contender. I think I would have entered the season with them as one. I know it's been bumpy with their young guys so far this year, but I think they'll figure it out. And I trust Ant and Randall and that group to be right up there. So I guess part of it depends on kind of how long Anthony Edwards is out and whatnot. But I also have them as a contender, but certainly teetering a little bit. I would have liked to already see a little more faith in Rob Dillingham than we've seen thus far, but did play last night, I think, and looked like he had a decent game. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come for him earning more trust and continue to get his feet wet.
I like it. Yeah, before the season, I would have contender, and I still do. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there with Ant Edwards and Randall and Gobert and all their depth. Like this is the team that has proven me wrong every time I like pick against them or think that I've bet against the double big trades twice in a row for them, and they've proven me wrong both times. So I'll give them benefit of the doubt here. And if I had to like up my standards a little bit looking back, if I wasn't gonna just invite everyone into the contender club, I probably would have had the cutoff around the top four in the West: Thunder, Spurs, Warriors, Nuggets. Those four really jump out to me as like just knowing what we're gonna get. Like they know who they are. They're the Spurs a little less so, but the other three are super complete, super just like they've been contending for years. They're just as good, if not better than ever. They've still got their healthy stars. They're still great on both ends. And, we'll see if the Spurs kind of like cement themselves among that group as well. But those four, I think, would be higher in my contender club. And I would just, from everything so far this season, would move probably the Clippers, Rockets, Wolves down a peg with the Lakers a little bit. And if I was going to be a little harsher of a critic. And looking at the East, I have the Sixers, Bucks, Cavs, Knicks, and Magic. You have just the Cavs, Knicks, and Magic. So, I'm going to give Embiid and Giannis just a smidge of an outside chance to put them in that contender spot. But, depending how you want to play the game, like they could probably be pretenders as well. So your contenders in the West were the Timberwolves, the Nuggets, the Warriors, the Spurs, and the Thunder. And mine out West were Thunder, Spurs, Warriors, Nuggets, Clippers, Rockets, Wolves, if we're going to count all of them. So quite a few contenders here, quite a few. I think the whole league is wide open to the point where we're getting closer and closer to the NFL product of just about any team can win just about any night, especially when it comes to a playoff series. Like I think we're basically at that point where unless there's unless there's a juggernaut or a super team or the Thunder figure out everything offensively and just continue to draft all-star after all-star to their team or whatever it may be. Like other than that scenario, it just seems a lot more parity is the word that I'm looking for than before. And I do think that's a good thing for the league. But we also, I love the storylines that go into the league. I think that really, like what NBC and Amazon are doing storyline wise to build up the narrative of the games is really been great and just adds a little gravitas to all these games. It's a little bit of history sprinkled in, a little bit of matchups, a little bit of beef. The league is better with a little beef with players, like rivalries and all that. So I love all that's been happening
I
this
really
season.
enjoyed NBC debuting their like sideline reporter for each team thing on Monday with the Cavs and Pistons. They had Robbie Hummel with the Pistons and Austin Rivers with the Cavs.
Mm-hmm.
I think every time out they were just listening and kind of what the tone of the conversation was like in the huddle. I thought it was a really cool insight. I had part of the game on mute, but of the couple things I caught when I wasn't on mute, I was really intrigued. I think it's a really cool wrinkle. So I agree, NBC's been really solid so far. And for just presentation perspective, I love the little three thing, the animation they have when someone hits a three or when they hit then they have a slam dunk one too as well, which I really enjoy. So it's always fun when the broadcast adds to the enthusiasm of the viewing experience. So kudos to NBC thus far for what it's done for us viewers. I've appreciated it.
No doubt. NBA on NBC is everything that ESPN wanted to be the last 20 years. Like it's like NBC
could have been. Maybe
it could have been.
Didn't care to be. I don't know.
Yeah, if they had tried at all. Like NBC hasn't touched the ball in what 30 years, and now they got the rights back and just picked it right back up. They got the na playing every time. Now we got the music back. I mean, come on, it's an amazing production value, and I definitely think it makes a Tuesday night basketball game feel bigger when it's done right and presented the right way. So it's just been a really fun start to the season. A lot of turns, a lot of exciting scores popping out of nowhere. Some teams a little worse starting off than we thought. Some teams overachieving. See how it all shakes out. But this has been cool to break down the whole league, man. I appreciate you taking the time. We're going on 2 hours 23 minutes. Maybe this becomes 2 podcasts. Who knows? We might even talk. Who the heck knows what this could be? People are going to spend an entire afternoon with us listening to some basketball here. So I appreciate you taking the time, Jack. It's been a lot of fun. Always fun. Got to keep it up. Do it again sometime. Appreciate you, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Learning Basketball is a Swiss Theory podcast hosted from beyond the arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work
on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.